Okay,
So yeah, so I was going to say was so I've always struggled a little bit with the glossary aspect of your work. A lot of the other bits I understand and make perfect sense to me, but it's not the way that I necessarily approach writing, and I don't tend to write glossaries. But interestingly, when I was looking at Obsidian and I was playing around with the zettelcasted method, the zettelcasted method is basically a kind of global glossary, right? That's essentially what it is. In the way that each note is supposed to be an atomic thing, it defines something, you specify the relationships between that and something else. And I've actually been finding it very, very helpful as a way of managing my literature, right? So instead of saying I've got groups of papers, I can say, right, I'm writing about a particular topic. I can link it to papers, I can link it to other topics. And as a way of thinking about a space as I'm writing, I find that quite useful. So I wondered whether you'd made that association between your glossary tool and the zettelcasted method of note-taking.
Yeah, I mean, Rain, whom I met at Hypertext a few years ago for the first time, she's working on this Me app.
Right.
And it seemed to be very much the whole based on transclusion, keywords, two-way linking, all of that stuff. And it seemed to be an interesting and simple approach to that. I've looked at Notion, I've looked at Rome and all of this, but it feels a little bit too programmery, some of it.
Well, the tools, there's a difference between the tool and the method, right? So there's the zettelcasted thing you can do in Notion or in Rome or in Obsidian or anything really, or a TiddlyWiki, anything where you've got linking. But it's this idea of bottom-up organization, right? So that and this is why this for me is why I find it useful for my papers, because the thing I've always complained about with reference managers is that they don't let me manage my references, right? Which seems to be a big problem.
Yeah.
You know, so Zotero and Mendeley and all the rest of it, they're very good at pulling in the metadata and doing the web scraping bit. Well, very good, mostly good. But then once I've got them, what on earth do I do with them, right? And part of the reason is that they have a top-down approach. You know, you kind of create folders, you allocate things to a folder and so on. What's interesting about the zettelcasted method is that it's bottom up. So what you do is you essentially just create atomic notes that describe atomic concepts. You link them to as many things as you can think is relevant. And over the time, that network, out of that network emerges topics and areas which are very sort of highly interlinked spaces, right? And it is essentially what you're doing with your glossary. The difference being with the zettelcasted, it becomes an external resource that's separate from your writing, but which covers all of your writing. Whereas with your glossary idea, it becomes something which is internal to the document and covers that particular document and the concepts in that particular document space.
It doesn't have to. We're going to make it easier to make it, you take it into another document or even universal.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear you talk like this because it is so related. But if I now, for instance, select hypertext here and do Command D for definition.
Yeah.
Ted Nelson is here.
Yeah.
But there is no action in this box. If this had an action to click on Ted Nelson, then it would be much closer to Notion and Rome, right?
Yes, but the fundamental idea of saying that this hypertext node is here, right? And I thought you did have associations in here, didn't you? How are you specifying the associations?
That's it. It has Ted Nelson as text, and as you can see,
okay.
That is it. It's designed, remember, for students to learn. So that's a specific use case where, as they say, blood is red. You know,
so I didn't get far enough with Rome to know whether it does the same thing, but certainly Obsidian does. It does it. It doesn't show them on the graph though. It only shows explicit links, but it will reveal implicit links, so you can follow those as well. Yeah, it was interesting to me that having worked with you for so many years now, I never quite understood this piece of what you were doing. It had suddenly clicked for me. I was like, okay, I'm starting to understand how I could be using this in my own work and my own workflow.
It is really, really, really interesting and worthwhile to have this discussion with you. And I thank God it's recorded, because what you saw here, as I said, this has taken me a decade, 2 decades to come up with, because there's been so many ways of this document, 68,000 words, I get lost. This really helps me, and I've covered this, that's that, but I still have not really figured this out yet.
Yeah.
I think it is good and useful, but it isn't where it needs to be. So to talk to you, first of all, there is a difference between a concept and a reference, obviously.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't have to be. That's why here, I mean, let's add one. So for instance, we have, we have you, right? So I click here. Am I not citing you? That's extremely embarrassing.
Well, you don't necessarily, it's not necessarily relevant, a lot of the stuff I've done. Yeah.
I think I've done Vint because of the references he has. Oh, no, he's come up. Anyway, so you can assign.
Yeah.
But the whole atomic notion or atomic thing is the concept. And this book is absolutely phenomenal and reminding us a few things that are just so stupidly crucial. It makes the point that language is an infrastructure for social coordination and not for the transfer of information per se, but it is to help people try to see what you're seeing. Right. It is, and it even says here that human reason is a social tool. Reason evolved for convincing and persuading other people, winning arguments with other people, defending and justifying actions and decisions to other people. Right. So once you go into this murky humanness of things, of language, not just text, but language, I think these things become interesting. But it would be really worthwhile to have this dialogue be much more useful and universal.
Yeah, it's tricky. I kind of feel.
Actually, do you want to show me how you've started using it? I would love to see if you have anything.
Oh, in Obsidian?
Yeah.
Yes. Hang on a second. So in fact, I'll show you what I did this morning. So let me share my screen a minute. Oh, crikey. Big share.
Yeah, you should be able to do sharing. Now the line went funny. Yeah.
Screen and like a million things come up, right?
Oh, bad connection, but now you're back. Yeah, you're back.
Okay, can you see that?
No.
It kind of looks like. So
I cannot. Oh, it's coming now.
The idea is it's an idea of note taking. Oh, okay. So in this.
Hang on. Okay, finally it's up.
Is that better?
Yes, and please start again. I didn't hear anything.
I wonder if I can. Right. Of this is that each note is a kind of atomic concept, but some notes are more kind of explanatory. They kind of link things together. So this is the graph of what I've got just over the last couple of weeks of playing with this, and you can see there are some big themes coming through. So hypertext is here, for example. I was doing some work this morning. I've been working through a book on kind of key pedagogical ideas. So that's this little network over here. So you might have, so this is the concept of pedagogy. So that's an idea, that's just something to be linked to. But I started with I'm working through a book called How Learning Happens. So these are kind of a list of principles for teaching. So the first one I did was this idea of little experts. So this is the kind of like a mini page on little experts. I use Zotero. I can bring in stuff automatically from Zotero. So this is a paper that's in Zotero. So I can reference that if I hang on a second, if I do insert literature link, basically it lets me go through everything in my Zotero library. So if I look up something, I can see what's there. And if I click on one of these, it will then create a link and it will create a page in Obsidian for it. So I can go and have a look at it. And I can create a template for that page which specifies how it's populated from Zotero. So
that's very nice.
So essentially that's in here. And then it's, as you expect, you kind of you can bring in other links. So this idea of a simulation of accommodation, for example, that's another page here. You can have links that don't have an endpoint yet, but they're still recognized. So Jean Piaget is a kind of a key figure in educational research. So
I know he was in my 9-month paper, but then I wasn't allowed to use him again.
There you are. So Piaget, so I put him as a link here, right? And that would then that then appears on the graph, but doesn't necessarily have a page in it. So yes, it's just a way of kind of linking things together. The idea is that you have these atomic pages, and then you have these maps of content. So the maps of content, as I said, are kind of more kind of trying to make sense of what you've got, putting links in there. That then generates a graph, and you can color things by their tag.
Hang on, I have to open the door. 1 second.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Ivan is home. Oh, no, sorry, I'm in a meeting. All right, sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you find this graph useful?
Well,
I mean, it certainly is good looking.
I mean, it looks great, yes, but it sort of is actually, because it shows this emergent structure. And what I've done is I've
the zooming in helps. The zooming in made a big difference.
Yeah, if I zoom in, you can see the actual content. But ironically, for me, that's not what's useful, right? What's useful is the shape. So, for example, so all these light gray ones are things that haven't been defined yet, right? The red ones are kind of high-level concepts, which become hubs. So I've got hypertext, IDN, and pedagogy is another one. The black ones are these maps of content. So, for example, I wrote a paper. This is what I tried it out the other day, which is called Authoring with IDN Patterns. So what I did is I sketched out the shape of that paper here. And as I went,
I can't hear you.
Find some of those concepts into Overleaf to kind of turn it into a paper. So I wrote it here as a.
Can you go back a little bit? Once you got to this page, the audio.
So this is a. Yeah, so this is a page I created when I was authoring a paper, and it's essentially a map of content. So it's got a tag at the top, and it's if you like. So it's the way of thinking about it. A paper is kind of like a tour. So this is almost like a trail, right? It's like a tour through the material that's already in the note system, right? So this is basically saying it's an explanation of how a bunch of stuff fits together. So in this case, I was trying to think of different ways that patterns could be used in authoring tools. So I define those ways. They become pages of themselves, which is just a simple definition of them. I've got kind of templates for these things, and it kind of builds up. And it's been interesting for me because I've not worked in this way before. And it reminded me, like I said, it reminded me heavily of your glossary system. but the difference being that instead of working on the document, so if I was using author here, I'd be writing this as a paper in author. Right.
That's not what I wanted. Let's see if he comes back in. Oh, we're back. Excellent.
I dropped out for some reason. Yeah, so it's like I said, it wasn't so much that I was recommending Obsidian as a tool, whether it's a perfectly reasonable tool. It was more of the fact that I've tried a method that I've not previously tried before that's quite close to your glossary system, and so far it's been working quite well for me, right? And you could apply that method in any sort of hypertext system, to be honest. Doesn't, you know, I could have done this in Notion, but Obsidian kind of gives you that nice graph view, which is quite useful to sort of see emergent structure as it appears. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I need to, the graph view, I need to do, but Jacob hasn't had the resources to do that yet.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have any kind of auto layout, which is interesting. But you said there is a view in there that's kind of a paper, which is a trail through the knowledge, which is really fascinating.
So this is the zettelcasted method rather than the tool, right? So the zettelcasted method is that you have these notes which are atomic concepts, and then you create these maps of content which are essentially tours, right, or trails that explain how a certain set of things all fits together, right? And the idea being that that's a way of bringing your thinking together. And I've been using it for paper writing, in that those trails essentially are my outline for a paper. So I developed the kind of, this is what I want to say, these are the ideas, and then I've turned that out. I mean, I say I do this, I've only done it the once, but it's worked very well, right? And I've also found it very useful for note taking. So I've been going, the thing I started with was, I've been going through this book, which is kind of key ideas from pedagogy, right? And I've made a couple of attempts at this, but it's quite dense. It's not like a popular science book. It's a condensed book about key concepts taken from real research papers. And I find it quite hard to get it to stick, but by actually trying to convert it into a network of things in here using this method, it's been quite, how can I put it? It's been quite a useful way of engaging with the text, right?
That's a key thing of the pedagogy right there, having to rewrite it somehow.
Yes, and conceptualize it. And I've done it before. I've done it using more traditional notes before, and it's been completely useless. Whereas actually going through, finding some relevant papers, bringing them in, breaking it down into its atomic parts, yeah, I found it quite useful. So yeah, it's been, and I think for me, it's been about understanding a missing bit of my own knowledge work, right? Which I've kind of been trying to figure out through the reference manager stuff. Like I said, you know, Zotero wasn't working for me, Mendeley wasn't working for me. And I've realized that what was not working was, how do I make sense of all this in a kind of a knowledge map, if you like. So yeah, I mean, so far, you might speak to me in a year's time and I'll say, oh, I've moved on. But at the moment, I'm finding it, yeah, quite valuable, actually.
I mean, this is the kind of problem and issue that I really hope our community will engage with more and more, because there is tremendous potential. But with all the different approaches, it seems it's like buying a car or a camera or whatever it might be. There are pros and cons to everything.
Yes.
And we haven't gotten to a good set of underlying principles that everything must have.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. But the work that you do there stays there for you. It's not something you export for a document. So you basically have to redo it, right?
Yeah, it's essentially it's a note-taking method, right? So it's a way of preparing your thinking before you create a paper. And I suppose what it's done for me is it's taken something I was already doing in something like Overleaf, and it's put it in a place so that when I then do it for the next paper, it's in the same thinking space, and the things that were there before are still there and can be brought in, right? Yeah. So, but yes, so something like that page, that's essentially a note that says, this is the key ideas, these are the beats that I want to go through, and then I take that across, and it becomes a paper in Overleaf. So that's disconnected, which in a sense is disappointing, right? That's the disconnected bit. But as a method of organizing your literature and your thinking, it is a lot better than the folders or tag system that you get in reference managers. Right?
Yeah, that's really interesting because I'm very lazy. And so part of the whole thing here is once you've done your thinking here,
yeah,
that it exports as a glossary. That's really so important. You don't have to write it again.
Anyway, we should talk about your analysis.
Oh, that stuff. Yeah.
That stuff. I know.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff it's just so absolutely crucial, this, because now you've sent me down this rabbit hole.
But I think the other thing, this is why I wondered whether the zettelcasted method was something you should have a closer look at when you think about your glossary stuff. Because the other thing with that is that you don't link everything, right? Or you don't make notes and everything. You only make notes on things which are interesting or surprising to you, right?
Yeah.
Because you're, and again, it's journey over destination, right? It's basically saying that the value to you is in the process of making the notes. It isn't the notes themselves, right?
Yeah, it's a huge part of it. I agree.
And if you get some value from the notes afterwards, if they give added value when you go through the process again, that's a bonus, right? But the idea is you're not creating a kind of a personal knowledge repository that's sort of your, if you go online, you'll hear people talking about second brain. I don't necessarily buy into any of that. But as terms of a process for thinking, I think it's quite valuable. And I think that's what you're trying to do with your glossary, right? You're saying as you write your document, these concepts are coming up, right? Whereas what I'm doing here is very, very similar, except what I'm doing is I'm trying to get some of the concepts straight inside a separate tool before I take them across into the document. Whereas you're saying as you're writing, this kind of glossary develops, which is just a different way of approaching the same problem. Yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, yeah, we should talk about your analysis. As interesting though this is, it's not helping you at all with that.
No, yeah, I would love to do that. Let's do that in a second. But just closing this segment, it would be great if you can join us ever for the Monday, Friday talks. Of course, this Friday we have a guest speaker, Omar Rizwan, who is very well known in the new kind of tools for thought community. He's at Deloitte and does all kinds of things.
Oh, okay. But, yeah, I unfortunately I can't do this Friday because I'm traveling back from the university at that time. But I've got to go in this Friday
because our usual Monday, Friday chats, they're still very much to do with VR, but not exclusively. I think to have a discussion with you on this topic with the group, where everybody's kind of fighting their viewpoints to see what bubbles up would be absolutely amazingly useful.
Yeah.
So let's consider that.
They're in my diaries. In my diary, both sessions.
Yeah.
And I have been trying to make them. It's just, unfortunately, I tend to finish about 4:30 for family reasons.
Yeah,
So,
no, of course.
so yeah, so it's a bit difficult, and I would have tried to come on to attend on this Friday, but I'm traveling. So, but yeah, keep me in the loop on them, and I will. I started. I mean, the last one, the idea of the enacted cognition, I thought that was fascinating. Have you posted the video for that anywhere, by the way?
The video, yes, but not the transcript yet, because there's been issue with the transcriber. Understandable, unforeseen.
Where can I find the video? Is that on the
futuretextpublishing.com journal, or
right.
it's also on the Future Text Lab webpage.
Right.
But hang on, I'm just going to give you the other link.